is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The UN says as many as 100 migrants have died in shipwreck off the coast of Libya. What next for Tunisia? We look at the country's transition following death of President Beji Caid. And maritime experts meet in Accra to deepen cooperation in fighting crime at sea. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live from Nairobi. I am Peninah Karibe. Also coming up this hour, Tanzania to sell 1 million tons of maize and flour to Kenya to alleviate a prevailing food shortage. And DR Congo and Kenya set up final clash at the maiden FIBA African Championship on Saturday. Up to 150 migrants have died in a shipwreck off the Libyan coast. According to the United Nations estimates, about 145 migrants were rescued by the Libyan Coast Guard. Latest figures show more than 600 people have lost their lives on the Mediterranean crossing this year. Total has more details on the shipwreck as well as the international reaction.
It's the worst Mediterranean tragedy to happen this year. Shortly after leaving Libya's coast heading towards Italy, a boat carrying hundreds of migrants capsized. The passengers were rescued by the Libyan Navy and local fishermen. But before help came, some migrants struggled in the water.
In the afternoon, we searched from Libya going to Italy, but when we went, after 1 hour, the ship started to sink, and most of them sank it. And we risked ourselves. No one can help us, and no one came to rescue us. Here we are in a big problem, so we need your help.
The migrants were taken to homes, where they'll be returned to a migrant detention center. Migrants have reported abuse and inhumane conditions at Libyan detention centers. The current treatment and handling of migrants and refugees has garnered debate on the global stage.
We must now see a change in approach to the situation in Libya and the Mediterranean that has as its core saving lives as a priority. We must see more search and rescue boats operating on the Mediterranean, as well as the immediate release of people from these detention centres in Libya, and for states to help us evacuate refugees out of Libya to safety.
EU countries such as Italy have taken a hardline stance towards the problem of migration. But France's Emmanuel Macron is echoing the UN's call for a change of strategy.
Faced with this situation, I draw several conclusions. The first is an explicit demand from France to the Libyan authorities to put an end to the detention and the situation which has developed on the ground with regards to these populations, and to allow, in cooperation with the Office of High Commissioner for Refugees, the International Organization for Migration, and all the other actors, these people who are in transit, who are waiting, to be returned to safety according to the protocols which have already been laid out by the organizations I mentioned.
Despite the dangers, Libya continues to be a hub for migrants and refugees looking to reach Europe. Total, CGTN.
To Tunisia now, and the Speaker of Parliament, Mohamed Nasser, has succeeded President Beji Caid following his death on Thursday. Essebsi has been suffering from an undisclosed illness. The interim president has called for unity and calm as the country prepares for Essebsi's burial ceremony and an election to replace him. ACGT and Zadnet Shawashi with more on that.
Interim President Mohamed Nasser announced in a televised statement that he took up his new position as President of Tunisia following the death of President Beji Caid under Articles 84 and 85 of the Constitution.
I took the oath. I'm committed to comply with the provisions of the Constitution, to preserve Tunisia's independence and the integrity of its territory, and to respect constitutional laws and rules.
Hundreds of policemen have been deployed in Tunis and near the presidential palace in Carthage. The Commission of Defense and Security at Parliament stressed that the security situation is under control in the whole country.
The interim president took over only hours after the death of the president. The security situation is stable in the whole country. There is no political, social or security crisis. Tunisia is safe and the state security apparel and institutions are working normally.
Analysts assert that the death of President Beji Qaid Essebsi could have destabilized the country. However, the 2014 constitution was respected by all political parties. In addition, the National Army and the security forces did not interfere in the peaceful and constitutional transfer of power.
The president's death was a shock to the population because he is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The stability in Tunisia remains fragile because it is still experiencing a democratic process. While there are many terror threats, zero threat does not exist.
Interim President Mohamed al-Nasser urged parties and national organizations and associations to be confident in the state institutions and support them so that Tunisia remains free, independent and invulnerable.
Tunisia expects a high participation of foreign delegations at the funeral of President Beji Qaid Essebsi. Authorities say security measures have been tightened as the country prepares to host several kings, heads of states and prime ministers. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
And for more on the impact of Essebsi's death and the next steps for Tunisia, we joined live from Cairo by Dr. Ziad Akal, who is a researcher and political analyst at the Ahram Center for Security and Strategic Studies in Egypt. Dr. Akal, how would you define Essebsi's legacy?
Well, first of all, hello. I would think that if we would review or try to evaluate Beji Qaid Essebsi's legacy, then we would have to say, first of all, that he came at a transitional time, a post-revolutionary era for Tunisia, and at a time where there was a lot of mobilization within society and a lot of political forces and civil society that were active at that time. And his main aim was actually to try and achieve stability, whether on a security level or on a political level or even on a social level when it comes to the state's functions to provide citizens with social provisions. So he did not have pretty much of a political agenda as much as he wanted to sort of maintain or go out of the phase that followed the revolution in 2011, and that is why his task was more bureaucratic and administrative than it was political.
But he also faced criticism on several fronts as well, didn't he?
He did, of course. I mean, any transitional president, any president who reaches, or any politician, not only president, who reaches a position of authority after a time of tension, of political tension in the country, definitely there will be a very sort of polarized environment, polarized political environment. So he did receive a lot of criticism, yes, this is true, but he also did keep or manage to create a supporting lobby for him within the Tunisian inside. So the context that he became president in necessarily entailed criticism, but I think he managed to deal with it in some sort of a successful way.
How disruptive, if at all, would Essebsi's death be to Tunisian politics?
I think in the coming phase, Tunisia will witness some sort of instability. I mean, Tunisia does have a constitutional democracy and institutions, but we have to bear in mind, first of all, that North Africa in general is watching a state of tension, either in Libya, Algeria, or Tunisia, or sort of instability or uncertainty about political futures. In the case of Tunisia particularly, I think two things can happen. One of them is basically political forces going into a phase of rebuilding their alliances between each other, and therefore we might witness new political forces in the Tunisian inside. The other thing is this developing into a state of tension within the Tunisian street, and I hope this does not happen. But things in Tunisia will not be as stable or as smooth as they were until this process of elections is finalized. And we have the examples of both Algeria and Libya, although the contexts are different. But political change is not necessarily swift.
All right, Dr. Ziad Akal in Cairo, thank you. Zimbabwe's Tourism Minister Priska Mupfumira is expected to appear in court today after her arrest by the country's anti-graft body Thursday. She's the first high-profile official to be charged by the recently appointed Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission.
Priska Mupfumira faces corruption charges involving $95 million from her time as Labour and Social Welfare Minister, as well as during her current tourism portfolio. Her arrest becomes the first by the recently overhauled Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, which was given more powers by President Emmerson Mnangagwa to tackle graft. Soon after taking office, Mnangagwa said there would be no sacred cows in the fight against corruption and seems to now be living up to that pledge. However, there have been mixed reactions to this arrest. Some have hailed the detention of a sitting government minister as a good start and a statement of intent. However, others doubt if it will actually lead to a prosecution. They cite a number of other cases against former government ministers that have been dismissed at the courts. By law, the tourism minister is required to appear before the courts within 48 hours of her arrest. The Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission has indicated that will happen at some point Friday. Farag Makutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
The new team of health experts coordinating the Ebola response in the Democratic Republic of Congo plans to train Congolese citizens to conduct surveillance and vaccinations in order to build trust among locals. Containment of the deadly disease has been hampered by a mistrust of foreigners in communities inside North Kivu and Ituri provinces. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The surveillance against Ebola has been scaled up in the DRC. It comes a week after the World Health Organization sounded the highest alarm over the outbreak. The global health body declared the disease an international health emergency after a case was confirmed in Goma, a densely populated city in the east that borders Rwanda.
People traveling from Goma, including across the border into Rwanda, there's a lot of everybody's being checked. So we over the course of this outbreak, we have tested, Congolese supported by the international community have tested more than 70 million travelers.
The WHO decided against declaring the outbreak a global emergency on 3 previous occasions because the risk of the disease spreading globally was regarded as low. But the discovery of the case in Goma changed things. The city has an international airport, which health experts describe as a gateway to the rest of the world. DRC President Felix Tshisekedi has appointed a new team of experts led by Professor Jean-Jacques Muyembe following the WHO's declaration.
What we want is to involve the population of Beni, of Mangina, and to follow the strategy we will implement there. So the first thing is to train young people and also young people of this region So they will be in charge of vaccination, of surveillance, and so they will speak the same language as the people there.
The outbreak has occurred in a conflict zone where rebels have been attacking health workers and facilities. The international community and the DRC government have come up with a program aimed at strengthening the response to the Ebola outbreak over the next 6 months. But they are calling on the world to contribute more money to help contain the deadly disease that has killed more than 1,700 people since August last year. Chris Chamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
You're watching Africa Live. We're taking a short break, but don't go far. We'll be right back with plenty more.
Economic data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Peninah Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed, and this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives.
From Nairobi's city center.
News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
The UN Chief Antonio Guterres has strongly condemned the deadly terrorist attack which took place inside local government headquarters in Mogadishu. At least 6 people were killed and several others injured in Wednesday's blast. The mayor of Mogadishu was among those seriously injured. Guterres has reiterated the full support and solidarity of the UN with the people and federal government of Somalia. He also refuted claims that the attack was targeted at a UN envoy visiting Mogadishu.
The United Nations remains committed to supporting the people of Somalia in the pursuit of peace, stability, and development. As you're aware, there's a considerable amount of violence in Mogadishu, and we've expressed our concerns about that over the years. And Mr. Swan had been present at that site, but that had been some time prior to the attack. So we don't have any particular information connecting it to the targeting of our envoy.
Meanwhile, Somalia has been praised in a new report by the UN human rights experts, but the country is not yet out of the woods. A number of challenges still ahead as the country prepares for regional and general elections next year. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bello has more from the capital, Mogadishu.
The United Nations independent expert on human rights in the country presented some of his findings to journalists in the Somali capital after concluding a 12-day mission across the country. The report, due to be presented to the UN Human Rights Council in September, highlighted setbacks and progress made in various fields, including security, human rights, as well as the political progress in the country that comes as the country gears up for regional elections.
The holding of the 2016 and 2017 electoral process, which was held in spite of the intimidation by Al-Shabaab. I regret the deaths of 44 clan elders and other people who made the holding of the electoral process possible.
On the political front, Somalia has been praised for empowering women participation in politics, including the appointment of 4 ministers in the cabinet.
Increased number of women in parliament and cabinet, the appointments which were made to cabinet for those women, indicates that participation of women in public affairs is very important because they also take part in the peace and the reconciliation process and in other sectors where they make decisions which affect the nation as well as women as well.
The expert, however, pointed out to increasing Al-Shabaab attacks as a major setback to the realization of a stable Somalia.
I have witnessed the recovery of territory, towns and cities, and diminishing of the Al-Shabaab capability. This is due mainly to the actions of the Somali security institutions with the assistance of AMISOM troops and bilateral forces. I wish to commend the Somali National Army and AMISOM for their achievements and their sacrifice.
Government forces continue to achieve gains outside the capital, but have failed to contain the group's deadly assaults on key targets. On Wednesday, a female suicide bomber detonated explosives inside the local government headquarters in the capital, killing 7 people and seriously wounding the Mogadishu Mayor Abdurrahman Omar Osman. Al-Shabaab says its target was the top United Nations envoy to Somalia, who had just left the local government offices following a meeting with the mayor of Mogadishu. The Al-Qaeda-linked group has been accused by UN and other rights groups of violations against human rights, including the forceful recruitment of children into armed conflict and carrying out deadly attacks that mostly target civilians. Experts now want more to be done so as to shield civilians from a never-ending conflict that continues to plague much of the country. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Maritime experts are meeting in the Ghanaian capital Accra to deepen partnerships and cooperation in fighting crime at sea. This comes after a number of incidents of piracy, armed robbery and illegal fishing in the Gulf of Guinea region. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
This is the first International Maritime and Exhibition Conference to be held in Ghana. Ghana says it's crucial to discuss a range of threats to countries along the African coast and those inland.
Indeed, thefts, including illegal oil bunkering, kidnap for ransom, illegal fishing, drug trafficking are common across our oceans. These transnational crimes do not only threaten national and regional peace and stability, they also come at great cost to the economies of both littoral and non-littoral states.
In June, pirates hijacked a Turkish ship on the Nigerian coast. They abandoned the ship off Ghana. Maritime authorities from Africa gathered at this conference say regional cooperation is key to boost capacities of the naval force. They also believe pooling resources and coordinating maritime responses could help fight the threats of insecurity at sea. Experts say funding must be channeled into modern equipment to detect and prevent crime at sea even before it occurs.
There's got to be deterrence. People have to answer for their crimes. And once a few of these cases are taken and dealt with in the courts, it has to be dealt with ethically and legally. But if somebody's guilty of a crime, they should answer for it, either through fines or they're going to have to do some time in incarceration.
West African countries, including Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Ghana, have signed a memorandum of understanding here. It will see them sharing skills, building naval capacity, and running joint regional maritime patrols. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
A healthy nation is a successful nation. That's according to South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa. He was speaking at the signing of the Presidential Health Compact. The Health Compact is aimed at improving the quality of the healthcare system in the country. CGTN's Olisa Njamela has more.
It's no secret, South Africa's healthcare system is in extreme distress. Public healthcare facilities are overburdened with patients and are understaffed. Hence, President Cyril Ramaphosa in 2018 held a health summit to deal with this crisis. The summit attracted stakeholders from all sectors of society who deliberated on the challenges and proposed solutions facing the national health system.
President Ramaphosa says the signing of the Health Compact is a culmination of a long journey from last year's Presidential Health Summit, which seeks to deal with the issue of the crisis of the health system in this country.
The compact is aimed at tackling a number of challenges facing the public healthcare system and providing universal health care for all. It has one major stated goal: one country, one health system.
The transformation and effective resourcing of our health system is fundamental to our plans for building a just, equitable, and prosperous society. A healthy population is economically productive. It is a nation that is industrious and is the bedrock of any country's economic development. We are all aware of the challenges. We are here because we share a common vision of the South Africa that we want.
Ramaphosa said this is a commitment from government, showing it is serious about improving the health sector.
This compact will usher in a new dawn for South African healthcare, as it provides a clear direction for the implementation of solutions. This is a culmination of various sectors in the public and private healthcare.
The president has a buy-in even from the labour sector.
The labour movement has also committed to supporting the Department of Health by reviewing policies around remuneration for work outside the public service to limit its impact on service delivery.
The World Health Organization assisted in developing the compact and says it's confident it will achieve its goals. Yuli Sandramela for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
In South Africa, anyone born after the country's political liberation in 1994 is known as a born-free or a member of the born-free generation. One such member of the born-free generation is student leader Itumeleng Ntshube, who became South Africa's youngest member of parliament a month ago. Inspired by his late stepfather to get involved in politics to help improve ordinary people's lives, the young politician is passionate about fighting for free education for all South Africans.
At just 20 years old, Itumeleng Ntshube is said to be the youngest ever member of parliament in South Africa.
It means a lot, man. It's a privilege that you get to have a young person at the age that I'm in, to be in the law-making board of the country. It's a privilege. But over and above, we thank the African National Congress for affording us an opportunity to be part of the 6th Parliament, to make laws and legislations that are going to benefit masses of our people, particularly the poor, marginalized and oppressed.
The young Itumeleng cut his political teeth in the Youth League of the African National Congress and as chairperson of the Congress of South African Students in his province. Today, he's the chief whip of the Free State delegation of parliamentarians in the NCOP, or National Council of Provinces. And veteran politicians in the ANC say they're keen to pass the baton to the new generation of parliamentarians.
He is such a calm young man for his age, and he's such a focused young man for his age. But I think what's driving him more is the fact that he grew up underprivileged. What I like about him, he's very clear about the fact that it's not about him being here, it's about the constituency from where he comes from. He wants to make a difference, he wants to make a change.
In this 6th Parliament, I'll be fighting for free education, for nationalization of all the private schools in South Africa, for the nationalization of the Reserve Bank, for all the means of production must be transferred into ownership of the people, like the Freedom Charter says. And the land must return to the people.
South Africa's youngest member of parliament, who turns 21 in September this year, describes himself as radical and revolutionary. He says he's determined to shake things up in parliament during his term in office in the next 5 years.
I mean, we're not here to play anymore. We mean business. You know, it's high time that we begin to act what we talk. Because masses of our people that tired with our lip service anymore. We've got to act, and act swiftly and decisively so.
He'll be the next president. Simple.
Ziad Akal, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
You're watching Africa Live. Coming up in business news. Tanzania to sell 1 million tons of maize and flour to Kenya to alleviate a prevailing food shortage.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live, Find your voice.
Tanzania is expected to sell 1 million tons of maize and flour within a year to Kenya to curb the prevailing food shortage. Drought in parts of Kenya has hit maize production, which is a staple crop. The first consignment of 20,000 tons will be sold in August. However, the countries have not agreed on the prices, with the Cereals Board of Tanzania expected to oversee the deal. Officials from both countries are expected to meet next week to discuss the details. British Airways resumes flights to Cairo, Egypt this Friday following a week-long suspension over security concerns. In an email to Reuters, the airline said it was pleased to resume services following a thorough assessment of security arrangements. No details were given about the airline's security review. The airline suspended flights to the Egyptian capital last weekend as a security precaution. An executive of Egypt's state-owned Egypt Air said earlier this week that British Airways' decision was without a logical reason, while Egypt's aviation minister, Yunis Al-Masri, also expressed displeasure at the decision. Lufthansa had also suspended flights to Cairo on Saturday but resumed a day later. The airlines continued to operate flights to Cairo. Still in Egypt, the IMF will release $2 billion as the fifth and last batch of a $12 billion loan to the country. In its vote earlier in the week, the Bretton Woods institution expressed satisfaction with Egypt's reform process. CGTN's Yasser Hakim reports.
Prior to the vote, the IMF Board of Directors issued a report commending Egypt's economic reform program.
The focal points for the IMF is to reduce the budget deficit and balance payments, to improve inflation levels, the public debt and foreign exchange. The report also focused on the social protection projects for the poor. The IMF said that Egypt's program has succeeded in all these categories and the government has done a good job.
However, the vote to deliver the last tranche of the $12 billion loan had been postponed for 2 months.
The IMF was waiting for some movement from Egyptian government to adopt further cuts in the subsidies on fuel as well as the new social security law and the public IPOs. It was all addressed this month.
The cuts in subsidies and austerity measures have been a burden on low-income earners, but it had the support and backing of the legislature and parliament.
The economic reforms are the painful but essential medicine to cure the economic ailments in Egypt. Parliament cannot leave the government to do nothing about the economic hardships. You cannot rebuild the nation without paying the bills. All of us are taking the burden. All Egyptians have been patient with the tough austerity measures and it is proving successful.
The final $2 billion batch is expected to be delivered before the end of July. The government says it will deliver the money to the central bank to push the foreign reserves up to $64 billion. The amount will then be delivered to the Ministry of Finance in Egyptian pounds to reduce the deficit gap. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Representatives from China and Mali have signed a memorandum of cooperation on the Belt and Road Initiative in Mali's capital, Bamako. The two countries will strive to promote integration in major strategic policies and strengthen cooperation in infrastructure and trade. The Belt and Road Initiative seeks connectivity between countries to facilitate trade, financial integration and people-to-people bonds. Mali's President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta said the project was highly significant to Mali.
It is a very promising initiative, and I must say, if you had to think about it, it is awesome. President Xi Jinping had this idea, and it proves once again that Chinese leadership is not only economic and political today, it is also moral and cultural.
This year marks the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. Next year marks the 60th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and Mali. Mali has successfully joined the Belt and Road Initiative. It has laid a new foundation and injected new vitality to the higher-level development of China-Mali relations. The development of Mali is not easy. It is located inland and has challenges in many aspects. there should be a process for understanding and participating in the initiative. I think we have to uphold the right approach to justice and interests raised by President Xi Jinping and create more development opportunities for Mali.
Ratings agency Moodys says a proposal by the South African government to provide additional financial support to struggling Eskom is credit negative, as it is a further drain on fiscal resources. Finance Minister Tito Mboweni this week tabled an appropriation bill in Parliament to give the state-run firm an extra 59 billion rand, or just about $4.2 billion of government support. CGTN's Angelo Cupola reports.
Mboweni said the bailout will come at a significant cost to the fiscus and to taxpayers. He also cautioned that with tax revenues likely to be significantly lower than budgeted for, government borrowing could increase substantially.
So the only things available to the government are either give it a huge amount of money, a big bailout, or take over some of its debt, because Eskom is deeply in debt. So it has chosen to give it more money, and it may well be the case that in the near future it has to take debt as well. So it's out of options.
The utility has been under scrutiny at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into State Capture for a range of possible corrupt and fraudulent activities.
Eskom has been treated like a piggy bank for every corrupt crony who wants to steal money from the state. And we know that the costs of that corruption are now coming to haunt us and are having to be covered by ordinary South Africans who have to pay higher taxes and have to have their basic services cut to afford these kind of massive bailouts.
During his speech, Mboweni made no mention of any conditions attached to the proposed $4.6 billion bailout, although there is vague mention made on the conditions in the bill.
The most important thing here are the conditions attached to this money. We cannot give Eskom any more blank checks. There have to be strict conditions, and if they don't fulfill those conditions, no more money.
The country's president has often said that Eskom is too big to fail, and the finance minister is giving effect to those words, for which taxpayers are going to have to pay. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
American automaker Ford is increasing its investment in South Africa as it spends an additional $215 million to ramp up production. The move is expected to create over 1,000 new jobs with an additional shift. Nissan and BMW also recently increased production in South Africa. With uncertainty around Brexit, some of the big motor companies have moved parts of their operations out of the UK. CGTN Sumitra Naidu reports.
The Ford Motor Corporation wants to increase production in South Africa. It's preparing to add a new shift that will create 1,200 jobs to its local workforce of 4,300 people. South Africa boasts a high standard in motor manufacturing and continues to receive solid foreign investment.
Reliability and repeatability is very important, and all our investment was mainly focused at that, and also making sure that we can build the vehicle in line with the standard bill of process that they use all over the rest of the world.
The additional shift will start in August and will be focused on the Ford Ranger and Everest models. While the vehicles are a popular buy in South Africa, they're also being manufactured for the export market. The Ranger is ranked as the top-selling pickup in Europe.
70% of what we manufacture here is for the export markets. So it is, I would say, the most important product going into Europe at this stage for Ford Motor Company. Obviously, they keep us very close and they make sure that we stick to our targets and numbers as well. But it is absolutely fantastic just to have a market like that we can feed into that continues to grow.
Ford SA has production plants in Port Elizabeth in the eastern part of the country and in Pretoria, north of Johannesburg. The plants will now run 24 hours, increasing production to 720 units per day from 506 vehicles currently.
Ford exports its vehicles to 148 countries across the globe. A third of all local production is sold here in South Africa and into other sub-Saharan African countries. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
A Nigerian company is providing bicycles as a means to ease transportation woes in urban centers like Lagos. Our Bike is looking to promote an environmentally safe riding culture in Africa's most populous country. CGTN's Alexandria Majala with the details.
Olatunde Nafiu is a student at the Lagos State University.
He is hoping to make it to class on time, considering the vast grounds he has to cover to get to the lecture hall. All he needs is his smartphone, the Our Bike app, and he can be on his way.
From the Faculty of Art down to the other gate has always been a challenge for me. So seeing them online on board has been a very great initiative, and I've always used it. At least I don't queue for shuttles again. Immediately I get into this, all I just do is to unlock the bike. I have the app, unlock the bike, then just ride down to my faculty in no time.
Our means hour in Pidgin English. This refers to something that belongs to more than one person. The Smart Bike Hiring Company was established in 2018 and aims to solve transport challenges. It targets gated communities, estates, and institutions in Lagos.
Hi, my name is Ifeoluwa Ogundipe, and I'm the founder of Our Bike, a mobility company that hopes to revolutionize mobility in Nigeria and Africa. Using Our Bike is so easy. All you have to do is download the app from either your Google Play Store or your Apple iOS store. Once you've downloaded the app and you've signed up and registered, all you have to do is tap Find a Bike. When you find a bike,
Ifeoluwa Ogundipe is one of the brains behind Our Bike. Upon his return from further studies, Ogundipe and his co-founders pooled a sum of $20,000 as seed capital and raised $107,000 in funding from various angel investors.
I moved to France for my studies, and the whole time I was there, I found myself using a bicycle. And it really just hit me like, why can we not, or why do we not use bicycles? You know, it's a really practical way, especially in a city like Lagos, to move around. That was where the seed of that thought was planted.
A 10-minute ride costs 6 US cents. The app offers navigation, and the bikes must be left at specific docking bays or a penalty will be charged to the user. With an estimated 5,500 users, the firm has recorded over 30,000 rides so far.
You know, offer Nigerians a solution that allows them more flexibility, you know, reducing traffic and reducing commuting times, and at the same time also preserve the environment.
Our Bike offers an even healthier alternative form of transport through monitoring over users' biometrics.
Options in terms of mobility are limited to just either buses or shuttles. And truth be told, they're not enough. You know, so it's been really good for us, and it's been really good for the students and also people that live in these communities, because what we've been able to do is to give them another way to move around. We've been able to give them another way to exercise. We've been able to give them another way to stay fit, another way to have fun.
Our hopes to have 5,000 bikes by the end of 2019, with an expansion plan of covering 13 universities across Nigeria. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
And still ahead on Africa Live. Breakdancing for positive change in Uganda's capital, Kampala.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
A dance project in Uganda's capital is training young people from Kampala slums how to break dance. The initiative hopes the discipline and skills taught needed to master the art will help keep youngsters out of trouble and make improvements to their lives. Close to 500 young people are involved. CGTN's Hilary Ayasiga reports.
A windmill stroke, Apollo Manana is perfecting his breakdancing, and as well as being taught how to move, it's also given him some much-needed motivation.
Breakdance has improved my life because at first I wasn't schooling. I had stopped in senior 2, and I was at home for 2 years. But when I joined Breakdance Project Uganda, they managed to take me back to school.
12-year-old Subra Natasha is not only mastering the top rock style here, but she also feels like she's become part of a community.
I have learned a variety of breakdance techniques. I have also made new friends. All this keeps me away from bad habits.
The dance project takes in young people between the ages of 4 and 19. There are close to 500 of them currently participating. Through breakdance, trainers here hope to produce better entertainers, but also keep these young people out of crime. According to the Uganda police, many underprivileged young people in Kampala's slums end up being drawn into criminal activity. But those involved in this breakdance initiative say they've seen many people turn their lives around.
Before we started this program, a lot of children here would pick up things that do not belong to them, and then when the program started, it instilled a bit of discipline in them, and then they know it's wrong to take what does not belong to you.
And there are plans for expansion. The project wants to reach out to those from slums across the country.
But our goal is to use that as a tool to get them to channel their energy into something positive and something creative. And so as they are learning skills and dance techniques, we also want to focus on developing other very important life disciplines, things like being honest, things like working together.
And as they master the breakdance moves, these boys and girls hope to make it onto bigger platforms and reap the rewards from their talents. Hilary Isiga, CGTN, Kampala.
And coming up in sports, DR Congo and Kenya set up final clash at the maiden FIBA African Championship on Saturday.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way.